The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes,
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuit!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Hello, good evening, and welcome to TV Party Tonight. I'm your host, Alexis Hejna, and tonight we are going to be talking about the show that is pretty much holding up Disney Plus at this moment because Lord knows nothing else is bringing in the money, The Mandalorian. We were supposed to talk about this last week, and everyone jumped ship because they all got sick. I mean, what's the point of having you guys here if I can't rely on you to not get sick?
I was healthy, okay? For the record, I was fine.
You were the only one.
My work says the same thing that you just did. What's the point in having you here if you're just going to get sick?
How's the Thai food, Vincent?
It's excellent, thank you.
David, can I steal your line?
Sure.
Thai food for Thai fighters. I am a polite host. I will ask before I tread on you and steal your good jokes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
So
we're eating Thai food. Let's talk about some Thai fighters.
hell yeah. All right. Joining me, my wonderful collection of sci-fi nerds, Mr. David Wright. Hello. I'm so glad you are feeling better.
So am I.
All right. As I mentioned, Vincent Van Spock.
Cheers.
You're lucky. I actually had to scarf down my dinner before we started recording because I knew I couldn't host and eat at the same time. So at least you get to, pace yourself out and enjoy your food.
Yeah, while I'm balancing my laptop on my leg here, so it just keeps wiggling back and forth.
I was wondering why you were kind of bouncing there. I thought you were maybe sitting on one of those, those inflatable balls that people sit on for their posture or something.
Oh, yeah, totally. Bouncy, bouncy.
Oh, like a medicine ball, kind of?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And of course, Andrew from Geek News Now. Welcome back, Andrew. Like I said, you were the only one who actually said you could still make the show last week. So I'm sorry that we had to reschedule.
That's all right. No worries.
And I just realized I got the wrong button there in the corner. I forgot to click. I was like, this is a damn you, Hollywood. Why did I still have that up there? All right. So yes, we are talking season 3 of The Mandalorian. This picks up actually after not only season 2 of The Mandalorian, but also the Book of Boba Fett. We have, because, we talked about this before on the show, why in the world did you guys decide to basically do season 2.5 of The Mandalorian in the middle of Book of Boba Fett? Short version, if you didn't watch that show, Grogu is back with Din Djarin. He's got his new ship, and they are still buzzing around.
They're still buzzing around.
Still buzzing around. That's the way I'm going to call it. They're buzzing. All right. So we do have a main plot going through with this season. Starting the fact that Din Djarin is seeking to redeem himself. He had to reveal in Book of Boba Fett that he did take his helmet off in front of other people. This was seen in... Was it Book of... No, this wasn't Book of Boba Fett. That was Mandalorian season 2. See, now I'm getting everything confused. Too many crossovers, Disney. You're making it hard for the rest of us. And so, yes, he had to take his helmet off when they infiltrated the Empire base. And according to the armor, that means he is a Mandalorian no more. The only way that he can be forgiven is to bathe in the living waters on the planet Mandalore. Essentially kind of a rebaptism, if you were. Of course, the problem is that as far as most of them know, the planet Mandalore is dead. It was bombed. It was attacked. It was scorched. It is planet non-persona. It is essentially just like nothing but poison and nothing else there, as far as everyone else knows.
It's cursed.
Yes,
Cursed.
it is cursed.
Yeah, we know this because nobody bothered to check.
Yeah, we see that there are tribes of Mandalorians spread out across the galaxy, and it is cool to see them all uniting for a common cause. But you would think one of them would have said at one point, so does anyone just want to go take a look? Maybe send a droid?
I mean, it's so far away. Bo-Katan was on the moon. Like, it was just another orbit away. It's just too far. It's just like Harold and Kumar, right? I left my cell phone in the apartment. It's like, should we go back and get it? No, we've already gone too far. They're like 10 feet away from the door.
It was weird because he gets a droid to check like the air quality, and it kind of just reminds me of in Toy Story where Buzz is like scared to remove his like dome shield thing because he thinks he can't breathe out of
Yeah.
the whole like David's saying, like, did anybody bother checking just to make sure? Like, I guess just
For the record, not the first person to make this observation.
Yeah.
So pointing out, of course, we also, before he's heading to Mandalore, he's heading back to Navarro to meet up with Grief Karga. Everyone's always happy to get Carl Weathers back on screen. He is now the High Magistrate, which is, I think, kind of like a mayor position. Maybe. I don't know. He's in charge. Whatever's going on, he's in charge. And guys, we get space pirates!
That was cool. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we get Din, who now makes a new enemy with a captain of space pirates who, what was this guy's name? Gorian Shard, or as my husband called him, the seaweed monster.
No, that's Man Thing or Swamp Thing or one of those.
Oh my god, it was. You're right.
I think he's the space pirate LeChuck from Monkey Island.
Oh, there you go. That's a
same color
good pull.
palette.
Yeah,
Good
that's true.
reference.
That's a good pull. Alexis, you forgot the space whales. Forgot to talk about the space whales. Remember the space whales?
You want to go ahead and talk about the space whales? You go on and lead that discussion.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to mention, like I think within the first 5, maybe 10 minutes of the first episode, right? They're in hyperspace, and Grogu looks out his little dome window. You can kind of see the I think they're called the Purgle. I can't pronounce the word, but they're like the space whales from Rebels. I thought that was kind of cool. They can for some reason they can travel through hyperspace. So it's I felt like a nod, or we're kind of I thought we were gonna start setting up stuff for Rebels, or for Ahsoka. That's what it reminded me of, at least.
That's actually a good crossover or cross into another point. It was recently brought out. Dave Filoni's kind of getting badgered by interviewers who are saying, so just admit it. Ahsoka is Star Wars Rebels Season 5. Admit it.
That's what it looks like it's going to be. I mean, they brought back, they're bringing back Thrawn. That's basically just a through line into Rebels. So it's just the live action Rebels at this point.
Because, they've confirmed we got Sabine, we got Hera.
Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of wonder if that is sort of the thing. It's just like, it's Ahsoka. Are you sure you didn't want to just continue Star Wars Rebels? No, it's Ahsoka.
Well, I mean, Rebels isn't told from the point of view of Ahsoka, so
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Yeah, we'll find out when we actually watch it.
Looking forward to that, and I will be hosting the discussion. So we got I do kind of like the idea when we get in the first episode with Grief Karga. I have a list here of all the characters' names because I knew I was going to start mixing them up if I wasn't.
I just call him
careful.
Apollo. He's Apollo Creed.
Yeah, pretty much is Apollo Creed.
High Magistrate Apollo Creed.
Who's saying flat out, it's like, hey, I got a little cabin over here for you. You and Grogu can go live in it. It's like he's basically just handing the Mandalorian a nice little retirement package. Nice little touch. But Mando says, nope, I got one more thing I got to do. And yep, he's going to try to go to Mandalore. So we also got the recurring story on here with IG-11. that he wants to rebuild him because apparently Taika Waititi said, if you're not going to let me direct a Star Wars movie, you at least bring back my character.
Well, he's the only droid Din trusts at this point.
Yeah. It's kind of weird. That seems so weird to me though, because like, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but that ended up kind of like not really going anywhere. Like he kind of just gave up on that by episode 2. It just seemed kind of odd that it's like, it has to be this droid. It has to be this droid. And then in episode 2, he just settles for R5. And it's like, okay, or
Yeah, he's just badgered into taking R5, and that's that.
yeah, it just felt, I mean, we do get the payoff way at the end of the season, but it just seemed kind of like when I was going from week to week to week, I was like, what was the point of that? What was the point of the IG-11 like detour? But then, you know, we get to that point, but it just seemed kind of like goofy to do. Like it felt very video gamey, like very like side quests. Like before I do this thing, I have to do this side quest, and there's like a side quest for the side quest, and it was just like what are we doing? But that was my thought, at least.
It sounds like this was the Taika Waititi tacking it on at the last second.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Well, as those of us who watch Lightyear know, sometimes there is too much Taika Waititi.
I skipped that movie, so I don't know that.
Animation guru for Rattledge and Broadcasting Network. I didn't get the chance to. I had to go watch it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't that good.
I heard it bombed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, the dark side of podcasting.
So I'm going to skip talking about episode 2 because one of the episodes I really actually want us to talk about is episode 3, chapter 19, The Convert. Because this episode got a lot of people asking, just what the heck is going on? It doesn't really look, Ejin, by the way. Hi, Zach. Glad to have you.
I go there every week. Yeah. Get my groceries.
Space is pretty big, but have y'all ever been to Walmart? I used to work at a Walmart when I was in college. But yeah, we have an episode that doesn't really focus on Jin. In fact, doesn't focus on him at all. We are actually focusing on these two other characters, Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane. Now, these are, they were essentially members of the Empire. They, surrendered to the New Republic. They were given a pardon. And they now have to, pretty much just kind of work everything off, as it were. And the idea of this is kind of interesting. If you've studied a lot with World War II, there were a lot of officers in the Third Reich who basically just kind of put their hands up and said, hey, I didn't want to be a part of this, okay? I live in Germany, and my options were kind of limited on what I could do. And there were a lot of them that were given government jobs. Government said, okay, fine, you're going to come work for us, and we're going to keep an eye on you.
Yeah, it felt very Operation Paperclip like that, where like, it's like we're just gonna fold you into the new regime, and then like the way they don't even use their names. Like they have like these government assigned I don't know what you call them, like these numbers or whatever, or like these little code names.
Designators, something like that.
Yeah, it did feel very kind of like Operation Paperclip, which is like what you're talking about, Alexis, in terms of like the actual event. So where it's like we're just gonna fold you in, and you guys stay on the level, keep do what you're supposed to do, and we're going to use your expertise for improving the New Republic.
Yeah, but this episode, and I want your guys' opinion on it, it really feels like it doesn't fit in this season. Again, it's an interesting story, and it is an interesting way to look at it with history, again, if you know about Operation Paperclip, but it doesn't really feel like it goes anywhere, and I don't feel like it fits. David, what were your thoughts? How do you feel like this is how this connected to the season?
Yeah, I agree. It's a good story, but it didn't really fit with the larger narrative, focusing on the Mandalorians. It was just kind of there. Like, I don't know if it's going to weave into something bigger later on, and they just needed a place to put it. But like, I thought it was kind of interesting, the idea of sort of showing off just how poorly the New Republic dealt with the remnants of the Empire. Where they like you have this doctor who's an expert in genetics and cloning who wants to do medical research. It's like, no, you go over there and fill out paperwork. and the sort of obsession with being so afraid of anything associated with the Empire that they just want to destroy any traces of it. Like the scene where he goes to his boss and says, like, like there's a lot of really good medical equipment here that could be used to help a lot of people. It's like, oh, that's all Imperial stuff. We don't want anything to do with it. Throw it in the dumpster, destroy it. And it just kind of shows like they're just so afraid of anything to do with the original Empire, and the way that they even go about treating the sort of de-imperialized members. It just kind of shows how like maybe they're kind of making more problems than they're solving.
Possibly. Vincent Van Spock, what did you think of that episode?
It was a really interesting episode, but you're absolutely right that it didn't seem to fit. I think that they want to do something with Katie O'Brien's character, Elia Kane, going forward, but it just didn't seem to fit in this season. So if like they do more with her in season 4 or something along those lines, then I think it probably would have fit a little bit better in there.
Yeah, it does kind of. We can hope that Elia Kane is being set up to become a reoccurring villain in Mandalorian, or even hell, in other Star Wars series. Dave Filoni has made it clear that he wants more and more of these stories and these series to intersect. The buildup is they really want to do a humongous crossover episode with all of this, which, let's face it, I think we can all admit will be the biggest geekgasm of the Star Wars fans for the year. So Andrew, what did you think of the episode?
I like the episode. I just don't like it as part of the Mandalorian, as being part of, a greater overarching sort of narrative. But I like the episode itself. I'm like a sucker for like Star Wars lore, and this episode kind of does that. It kind of expands. Like, it's cool. I like the idea of like you have like these former Imperials who are kind of like they keep to themselves, like in these groups, kind of like it's like, oh, like when they're reminiscing, like not about the bad stuff, but the things they kind of miss, like, like, oh, like they're very clear to be like, oh no, like we don't miss the Empire, even amongst themselves, like, oh, we don't miss the Empire, but there's certain things about like the military life that they miss, right? Like how Dr. Pershing misses like those little rations, the little cracker things, right? Like I've never been in the military, but I can kind of like sympathize with like, oh, like this thing that I used to have that kind of brought me comfort, and now it's gone, right? And I like the scene where him and Kane are in the Monument Plaza, and like they have the glowing ice cream or whatever, and like they're kind of just milling about, and they're like, oh, like a planet of like 1 trillion permanent like residents and stuff, right? And there's like the little rock, right? The peak of it's like the highest peak of it's the last bit of like exposed ground on Coruscant. Like I love all that, like expanding the lore and kind of showing you a part of Star Wars that you don't normally get to see. And so like this whole planet is all one big city, except for this little tiny part we like preserved just to remind us of like this planet used to be like not a city, right? So I thought that was really cool. I like that. This would be perfect for like if they did like an anthology Star Wars series where we kind of just jump around and tell little vignettes and stuff. It doesn't fit with Mandalorian, but I still enjoyed the episode overall because I love just expanding Star Wars beyond like just Star Wars, like what we've seen. So
the bit with the mountaintop actually was really cool. Can you imagine? Think about just a mountain here on Earth and having
like
Everest, just a city built around it, and it's like, and there's the top of Mount Everest, and
wow,
you can walk right up to it.
Yeah,
it's kind of surreal.
I also like the fast walk, slow chase through the train from train car to train car with like the droids like trying to get their ticket. Like I don't know, it seemed like such a silly kind of premise for like a chase, but I like the tension. I kind of like the like oh, they get to the last car, they're gonna try to hide from the droids. Like what's going on? Like I enjoyed that scene. I thought it was kind of fun.
I also like that Kane's character is a different kind of villain than we see in Star Wars. One very similar to the Emperor in that she used emotional and mental manipulation in order to get to the ends that she had come up with. The Emperor in especially episode 3 is that way a lot. And so I think seeing that emotional manipulation in a villain is something that we haven't seen in a while in Star Wars, and I'm excited to see what they do with her, but right now it hasn't paid off yet.
So the next episode I want to talk about is the episode that when I saw a screenshot of this, I honestly thought somebody had made it in Photoshop. A picture of Jack Black and Lizzo with Grogu. I saw that on Twitter. I hadn't had a chance to see the episode yet. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of cool. Somebody wants to put Lizzo in a Star Wars world. Okay, that's kind of cool. I started watching the episode. Wait a minute, this was real? This was, again, a good episode, but really, really bizarre when you actually break it down.
Yeah.
We have Din Djarin and Bo-Katan with Grogu, who they want to just go talk to Bo's old army, her old guys who are working as mercenaries. But to get to them, they need permission of the Duchess and Captain Bombardier. And they say, we will only give you permission to talk to your former army, who are our mercenaries now, if you can find out why these droids have been going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And who's been making the droids go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? It's frickin' Doc Brown, of course.
Great Scott!
David, I know you're going to know what I'm saying. It's like, I really wish we had Jesse on to talk about that episode.
Oh, we could just like end our participation in the podcast right here and just let him go.
No kidding. It's just like, dude, we know how much you love Christopher Lloyd. Just go ahead and talk. And it is very strange that you have this character come out of nowhere and he's a separatist, he's still loyal. And it's very surprising. There's no buildup. There's no hints. I wanted to call this episode kind of a noir-esque thing, but I felt like the plot just sort of fell in our laps, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also kind of disappointed because this one was actually directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who has done some really good episodes of The Mandalorian the last 2 seasons. And this one, I was like, really, honey? This feels more like a poorly written fanfic than an episode of your caliber.
You really didn't like it, Alexis? Really?
I liked the characters, but I thought that the plot and the reveal just felt too matter-of-fact out of nowhere. It felt like they just kind of threw it in the lap. I like a mystery that kind of builds on itself a little bit more, and you get little clues and hints as to what's going on.
Okay.
Having Christopher Lloyd just stand up suddenly and say, I'm a separatist, it's like, huh? I honestly thought he was covering for someone else. It just felt so out of place. And then he willingly surrenders to the Duchess and goes, yep, I'm a separatist. Do what you got to do with me. Yeah, I thought there was going to be more to it. The way he was just so willing to admit everything, I was like, you're covering for someone, aren't you? We're going to find out there's someone else. No, there wasn't.
Well, didn't they narrow it down to him?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they found out that, he was the one who was putting the, what was it, nanobots?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, yeah.
Well, there's no other way to put it. He was spiking the robots' drinks.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. Now, I did enjoy Jack Black and Lizzo in the roles. I thought that, they clearly had fun. Lizzo, who I have not seen do a lot of acting. I know she's done a couple of TV appearances, 1 or 2 movies. She's not bad. She seemed to fit the role really well. And the scene of her knighting Grogu, of course, is just freaking adorable. You can tell she's just like, I just want to have fun with this little guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
he just like leaps into her arms like willingly.
Yeah, she's like, I want to hold him. And even Din Djarin's just like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And Grogu's like, no, I want this woman to hold me. What did you guys think? Do you guys think I'm crazy or?
I don't think you're crazy. But I actually really like this episode. I like the whole kind of like Blade Runner / iRobot kind of angle, where like I like the idea of how they reprogram these battle droids to just basically just so they could be lazy and just kind of run everything for them. I like the how Din has the encounter with the Ugnaughts and Bo-Katan, who isn't as like well traveled or as well like cultured as him. Like she like you see her like kind of struggle with communicating, but he's like I got this. Like I've dealt with them before, and like the whole like I have spoken thing, like how they respond to him. Like it's like, hey, like I know another Ugnaught by this name, and they're like I guess their attention. I like that kind of like cross kind of, I mean that's the right term, but I like the idea of like I have experience with this culture, so I know how to communicate with them. I thought that was kind of cool. Again, I was kind of like you, Alex, a little like confused. I'm like, why? Like when we're introduced to the idea of the droid bar, I'm just like, why do droids need a drink? Why do they need a drink?
Oil.
And then they explain that it's basically like lubricants with like little like almost like patch notes for the droid, like little bits of like little fragments of like metal or like nanobots or whatever. They basically are just patching the droids, and I'm like, okay, like that's cute, that's cool, that's kind of clever. Like I like the idea. The only thing that confuses me is the idea of how they have these droids that are programmed but seem to have like desires and wants and stuff. Like that's the part of Star Wars that always confused me about like how these droids have personalities and stuff. But I like the overall story arc in the Christopher Lloyd. I love Christopher Lloyd. Jack Black kind of took me out of it. He's like one of those actors like Will Smith where I see that person and I can only see the actor. I can't see you in any other role. I just see you as the actual person. That kind of took me out of it. And then in the lead up to being the weekend of when the Super Mario Brothers movie came out, like just too much Jack Black in the media like at that time. So it was just that kind of took me out of it. But I like how and then we get to the end with the kind of one-on-one Mandalorian fight. Although I do agree with you, Alexis. I think it's a little too video gamey where it's like, we can't let you talk to them until you complete this quest. Like it felt very video gamey.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, my God, at what point is somebody going to say it's dangerous to go alone? Take this.
Yeah.
But I like the like when they're examining the droids and then one of them just turns on and starts spewing lasers across the room and like they're like, I like the whole like you don't know who to trust. They're chasing the B2 battle droid through the streets. It just reminds me of like iRobot, and I love iRobot and kind of like Blade. I had fun. I like these kind of self-contained like villain of the week kind of things sometimes. So I had fun with it.
All right. David, Mr. Van Spock, either of you want to jump in?
Yeah, personally, I thought the weakest part of the episode was Lizzo's performance. Like, I don't know much about her. Like, nice person, I assume talented, singer, but as an actor, she still has some room to grow, shall I say. So like I just all of her dialogue just kind of took me out of the scene. Yeah, Jack Black, he's Jack Black. He's very good at being Jack Black. It's a bit odd like that this guy is running this whole colony, like really, like he exudes no sense of authority or responsibility at all. It's just sit back and watch him chew scenery, I guess.
Yeah, it really does feel like all three of these actors, all three of these people, Lizzo, Jack Black, and Christopher Lloyd, just walked into Filoni or Favreau's office and said, "Hey, I want a cameo."
Yeah, it could be. Like, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But yeah, like I thought the droid bar was kind of interesting. Like when the droid sort of the bartender sort of talks about, you humans built us and we're grateful for that. And the things you ask us to do, like really, it's not that big of a deal for us since we were basically immortal. I always kind of find that aspect of like AI or robotics to be a lot more interesting. Like if you read like sort of the iRobot, Isaac Asimov books, man, that is really hard to say those two things together in the same sentence. But he was always very much against the idea of doing what he called like sort of the Frankenstein stories, where you have the robot uprising against their mistreatment by their human masters. Like this is boring. It's overdone. These are machines. Like we don't know how they think about the world and what they want from the world. We just assume they would interact with it the same way humans would. So his stories were always more focused on more the implications of, we've now automated all manual labor in society and made it cheap and easily available. What does that do to everything else? I mean, this was no way near as in depth as an Asimov story, but I always kind of like the idea of depicting sort of machines in this way as not being human and having a different way of relating to their existence and the work that they do. Yeah, I mean, I big grin on my face when Christopher Lloyd showed up. It's always nice to see him and things. Like I enjoyed the whodunit of the story. I thought that it was a good split between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, and like Din having, like you say, the more experience with the Ugnaughts, and being able to do a lot of the work in his own right. Like the only thing I'll mention in closing is like I've heard some like criticism about the whole like the dark saber and how little it's used or stuff like that. Like my understanding is the dark saber, it's just a MacGuffin. Like it is there for the person who leads Mandalore to possess. Whoever possesses it is the ruler of Mandalore, and the only way that it can be transferred between people is through combat. So like really they could have used whatever. It could have been like, I don't know, the previous king's rubber duck from the bathtub. Like it's just, if you beat someone in combat, you get the rubber duck, and that symbolizes that you are the mightiest of the Mandalores and you have the right to rule Mandalore. And it's, like the darksaber itself, it's a cool weapon. Mm-hmm. And I think it kind of suffers too much for Star Wars fans just fawning over lightsabers. Like it's just a weapon. Like they can build another one. It's fine. If it gets destroyed, which we'll get to later, like they could just use something else to fill its spot. But like I didn't see it as Din Djarin giving up his character position in the story to Bo-Katan. It all made sense. I mean, I think even like once he got it and Bo-Katan explained what it was to him, he's like, "Here, you take it. I don't want it." She's like, "No, I can't take it. It has to be passed through combat." Mm-hmm. So like that bit at the end didn't bother me at all. It just kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So anyway, that's sort of my thoughts on that episode.
And that does actually lead to the end of the episode. Vincent, what did you think about that fight with Axe and Din, and the idea of just like Din finally getting rid of the darksaber and giving it to Bo?
The fight between Axe and Bo was actually pretty cool. I enjoyed seeing a Mandalorian versus Mandalorian fight again on screen. I think those are always really interesting to see how innovative they can be with some of their tech and the jetpacks and all that kind of stuff. The thing about this season is I went into it with a whole bunch of expectations. I expected there to be a power struggle between Din and Bo-Katan. I expected there to be some sort of like insider who had given up the Mandalorians to Moff Gideon or something along those lines, some sort of traitor within it. And things didn't really pan out the way I expected them to. But at the same time, that's not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes doing what's expected of the season might be the better way to handle it. And this one, it just seemed like everybody came together and we're all friends and family a little bit too quickly, especially in this particular scene. Yeah, she kicks his ass, and then Din's like, "Hey, you can have the darksaber because you killed the guy that attacked me and took it from me." So it's some Harry Potter Wizard World shit with the wands, and then like the very last episode, I'm expecting there to be a traitor amongst the group, and there's nobody. Axe is a good guy, the armorer is a good guy, and those are the two. I'm like, oh, it's got to be one of them that's gonna be the traitor to the group. But no, everybody's just great. We're all friends and family, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's the way it goes sometimes.
That there is a point to the idea of the traitor that I think they set up, and yeah, it's episode 5, and again, doesn't really go anywhere. At the end of episode 5, Carson Teva encounters the prison transport that Moff Gideon was in, and yeah, it got attacked. Moff Gideon's gone, and he mentions that there are remnants of Beskar alloy inside. And it's like, wait, are you saying that the Mandalorians kidnapped Moff Gideon? Now, obviously, a lot of us are sitting going, oh, they just left some Beskar alloy in there so they would find it and they would assume the Mandalorians did it so it would take the heat off of them. But that doesn't come into play. And like you said, then you go, oh well, maybe there's a traitor in the Mandalorian ranks who did help free Moff Gideon. That doesn't come into play either. So I feel like that whole line, I mean, we could see the transport's gone, it's been broken into and Moff Gideon's gone, and then we could raise the, oh crap, this is not good. But I feel that adding the, hey, there's some Beskar alloy here was unnecessary. I felt like it was dropped in for a plot point that frankly didn't go anywhere.
I think they were referencing the sort of super stormtroopers that Gideon had built, because they had Beskar armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's that. But again, I feel like that whole line about, are you saying Mandalorians freedom? I felt that was trying to do a nice little red herring and make us think something else was going on.
Yeah, it certainly would have been. Yeah, it would have been a lot more interesting if they had gone the route of the Mandalorians being blamed for Gideon's escape and tensions between them and the New Republic. But I think they went with the simpler option.
Yeah. Again, you're probably right. It was just dropping a hint about the new Beskar armor for Gideon's army. But that scene probably could have been written a little bit better to make it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
No, I was gonna say, yeah. It kind of feels like the whole the Quicksilver misleading WandaVision sort of, like the whole, like, oh, like, are the expected? Like, no, this is just a little fun little cameo just because. It felt kind of like that, where like you're leading the audience to go in a certain direction, and in the end, it's like, nah, we just because.
Mm-hmm. All right, and that is going to lead us into the final two episodes, which, in my opinion, I think are the two episodes that really cemented this season as definitely being good. So we have our Mandalorians are united under Bo-Katan and the Darksaber, and they've said, you know what? We now have proof that our planet isn't cursed, it's not poisonous, and we're going to go back. Oh, and we also now have a little battle suit for Grogu.
Yes.
Yes. No.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes,
Oh
yes,
my
no.
god.
It's kind of isn't it kind of like morbid in a way though? Like they carved out like, because in Star Wars, like the droids are like, I know they're just machines, but they also kind of have like personalities and names and stuff. But like they hollowed out a dead droid that was already like a statue, and then just put Grogu in there, and it's just like he's just using it as like a advanced weaponized baby like carrier. It's just kind of weird.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
So I have a nephew. He's not a year old yet, but I could just imagine him getting something and having the buttons that say yes, no, and just going like no, no, yes, no, no. And I could just imagine my sister and me just like, why the hell did they put the kid in that thing? That whole scene of him walking down, and then Grogu squeezes the fruit and pisses off the merchant. I'm like, oh sweet Jesus, it's Eden. That's my nephew, all right.
With the Grogu with I forget their names, but the species that Babu Freak is, and it's like, no, like bad baby,
No squeezy.
no squeezy, like bad baby.
That was adorable.
Azarians? I think they're Azarians. I don't remember.
Maybe. There's too many species to keep track.
Yep.
But yeah, so they're heading back, and wouldn't you know it, Moff Gideon's already there at Mandalore, and he's turned it into a base. And you get that scene of them walking around on the lower levels looking for the forge, and they sit and they go, hey, what's that sound? Jetpacks. Maybe it's more Mandalorians. Look over there. Those are not Mandalorians. The setup and the anticipation of that battle was so well done. I love just the realization of, oh my God, something's wrong. You feel it just as the Mandalorians feel it. You can sense that dread that is suddenly washing over them as they go, oh God, this is not good. Absolutely loved it. And of course, running into the lower levels and then walking into a freaking TIE fighter port, as it were. And again, their reactions like, where did this come from? It really is startling for them. They had no idea their home planet was being used like this. And those episodes are filmed so well that you feel just the anxiety, the dread, the fear that they're all feeling. Especially poor Paz Vizsla. May he rest in peace.
Gotta admit, he has the absolute coolest death scene I've seen in a long time. He just goes out fighting. He takes out so many of these guys, and then just three of the I want to call them the Imperial Guard, but they're not Imperial Guard. I can't remember what they are.
Praetorian Guard.
Praetorians.
Praetorian Guard. Thank you. The Praetorian Guard. Three of them show up, and like at that point, his gun's overheated, and he's just down to his tiny little shield on his arm and a knife. And he still tries. He does his best, and he gets in a few hits, but ultimately they take him down. And that scene was just amazing.
Now, quick question. Either David or Andrea, I'm sure one of you will know this. What exactly separates the Praetorian Guards? What makes them? Because I know we've seen them in previous Star Wars movies. I think the most recent one we saw them in was The Last Jedi, when they were guarding the not Emperor, as I call him.
Snoke, yeah.
Yeah, but what separates them? What is it that when they come out, and Paz Vizsla sees them, is like, oh, not good?
Well, I think it's pretty much just their weaponry, and like they're way more capable than your ordinary like stormtrooper. Like they have weapons that I don't know if they're like piercing Beskar, or maybe they're just piercing between the joints of Beskar, but like they have weapons that are pretty much like lightsaber resistant, right? So they're like they have like nunchucks and like whips and stuff, but like also like shock. They're just way more capable, like all around, like guard, like soldiers, pretty much.
Yeah. I guess I was trying to figure out, like, are these guys like the elite of the guards, pretty much?
Yeah, Secret Service, yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in order to kill Paz Vizsla, they did have to go in like through the neck up here, underneath the armpit, and some of the places in between the armor. So it's not like they could pierce the armor.
Yeah, well, it's the same when you saw the Mandalorians fighting the like super stormtroopers. They had to rely on shooting them in between the cracks of the armor, or stabbing them in.
I like that. It reminded me of have you guys seen John Wick, when everybody has like the Kevlar suits? It's like, oh, like now we're all on equal footing now. So now we have to like actually be skillful finding the weak spots in between. I like that.
Well, the bit where like they've got Din in the taking him down the hallway, and he starts fighting back to escape. The one trooper that like shoots the grappling hook on him and pulls him close is like, dude, this guy's really good at close range combat, and you just moved him right next to you. Not a good move.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever played Mortal Kombat? Have you ever played as Johnny Cash? You have just sealed your fate.
Johnny Cage?
Johnny Cage.
Oh, did I say Cash? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
am embarrassed.
He must be an unlockable character or something.
Oh god, Freudian slip there, guys. But I am turning beet red. That was
okay.
one hell of a bad line.
He uses rings of fire in combat.
He's dressed in all black.
As the opponent falls, he goes, and it burns, and it burns, and it burns. Yes, Johnny Cage. But yeah, so the penultimate episode does end on one hell of a cliffhanger. We got Paz Vizsla dead. We got Din kidnapped. We've got a good chunk of the Mandalorian front there killed, and they're retreating. They're not sure if they're going to be able to get back up to the ship where the armor and the rest are. And it's really terrifying. And then, of course, we go to the start of the final episode. And we get to see Grogu save Din. And we all knew he was going to do it. And the first thing we were going to hear was that robot on screen. We all knew it was going to happen. How great was it, though, to see Grogu rescue the Mandalorian like that?
I liked it. It kind of reminds me if you ever play like a fighting video game, like you have like you can do like assists where like someone jumps in real quick, does something, then bounces off. And Grogu was kind of just doing that, just like using the Force just to nudge people out of the way, and kind of just like set up for Din to get like the hits in. I liked
Mhm.
how I like how Grogu's not just an accessory this season. Like he's kind of off the bench now, kind of doing stuff, walking around, jumping around. When he's on the when he's on the little chandeliers thing and just running from the Praetorian Guard, I felt like so much anxiety. Like, oh no, like what are they gonna do? Like, he's not gonna die, but just like him hopping around, and they're just kind of just like it's like you're like when you're like trying to nudge a cat behind the couch kind of thing. They're just like taking shots at him. it was it was like it felt weird because I'm like I feel like I should be stressed, but I also find this humorous at the same time. Like I was at anxiety, but I was kind of like giggling at the same time because it just seemed kind of they're just kind of like prodding and stuff. It was a mix of emotions.
They do really set it up though, because we have the scene in an earlier episode where Grogu gets his first training lesson with the rest of the Mandalorians.
Yeah, the little dart thingy, the little dart gauntlet thingy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but when Grogu was fighting the guard, he was using only defensive maneuvers. He had no offense in that fight whatsoever. Whereas, like any other time he had fought before, it was somewhat offensive in a way. And then now he's had his training through Luke, and the Jedi way is pacifism, basically.
Mhm.
So he's learned from that and is now only doing defensive maneuvers until Din gets in there, and then Din does all of the offense. And so between the two of them, they had a pretty good team.
That is actually a really good observation. The
Mhm.
offense and the defense. I never noticed that. That's a good point. So, how great was it though to get Moff Gideon back as a villain? Giancarlo Esposito. I don't know how this man is able to convey villainy in his roles as well as he does. This man is an incredible actor, and I know he can play more than bad guys, but when he plays a bad guy, he is terrifying. And seeing him fly in with that dark Mandalorian armor, it's I keep going back to video games. It's like when you have to take out the shadow version of the character or something. It's like it's Nega Mando or something like
Scott
that.
Pilgrim, like Nega Ninja.
Yes, exactly. But I am going to go ahead and jump ahead talking about Gideon because let's just go ahead and ask the $1 million question. Guys, is he gone for good? Are we going to see him again?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Wright, you may start. Elaborate.
Yes. We don't know if he's dead. We don't know if he's alive. So he can be whatever the writers decide him to be in the future, depending on how the franchise goes.
Andrew, what do you think?
I hope he's dead. I know he's a great villain, but it was disappointing having him be the main villain 3 seasons in a row. I don't know. I thought because they don't really set him up that well throughout the entire season. Like we don't see him till like the penultimate episode, and it's like really, like we're just doing this again. So I don't know. I mean, no offense to Mr. Esposito, but it just felt very lazy to bring him back again. But I think we will probably see him again because again, like I mean, there's no body. I don't know how resistant that Mandalorian armor is to heat. And also, we introduced the idea of clones. Maybe that was a clone. I don't know. There could be more clones. I know. Din like basically drowns them, right? With some button presses, he drowns them. But like, I feel like who's to say that those were the only ones? There could
Yeah,
be more
he could have missed one.
Huh?
He could have missed one.
Yeah. So I think it's possible. Like David said, like it's up to the writers to. They have so many avenues to just bring him back again. They probably will. I really hope not. I really just kind of want to move on. I'm tired of kind of seeing him. So
Okay, fair point. Vincent?
Here's how I think they should bring him back. So they have him show up in the dark suit armor, the Beskar armor, and then he removes his helmet. And in the exact same way that it looked in Breaking Bad, the entire side of his face is just gone.
One of the most badass moments in television history. I think we'll all agree.
Yes. Do that and everybody will be okay with it.
and then like does he just like fall up? Does he keel over right after? Like he just falls over?
So, but the clones is an interesting point, especially since Gideon says those clones were going to be force sensitive.
Mhm.
They were actually going to be able to use the force. Imagine someone like Moff Gideon with Jedi Sith powers. Although it does beg the question, how do you create a clone with force powers? You know, where is the component to add that in? And I
Grogu.
swear to God, if one of you
Yeah.
says they just inject them with metachlorians, I'm booting you off this podcast under protest.
Oh no, we don't say that word anymore.
Yeah, wasn't that what Grogu was like the key central thing for that? That's what it was. I thought it was implied that that's what they wanted him for.
That's exactly what they wanted him for.
Mhm.
Okay, good. I was really worried you guys were going to say the word that we do not say on this show.
Nope.
You're so much better than that. That's why I love you guys. So yeah, we get our big badass fights. We get possibly the death of Moff Gideon. We have the Mandalorians reclaiming Mandalore. We have the reigniting of the Forge. And we have Din and Din has officially adopted Grogu now. It's official. He signed the papers. And now they've got their own little cabin on Navarro. And I love all the tweets afterward that said, hey, they unlocked the happy ending. Good for them.
The good ending, yeah.
Good ending. No, that was a very good. Vincent, what did you think of this final episode of the season?
Well, there's a lot of people online that believe that this was the end of the story for Din and Grogu, and they're going to go forward with other Mandalorians at this point. I don't know if I believe that. I think this is going to be Din and Grogu's story going forward as well. I'm hoping that the next time they come into it, maybe it's a few years down the road and we get like a teenage Grogu, one that actually talks and can do some more other than just be adorable. So that's where I'm kind of hoping the show goes.
All right. Andrew, what did you think?
I think talking about the good ending and all that, like this season felt like very safe. It felt very safe. But yeah, I think I don't know if it was Filoni or somebody confirmed that like the title of the show is still Mandalorian, but it's not like Din's the only Mandalorian, right? Because I think they mentioned like you can explore Mandalorian culture further with like Bo-Katan or pretty much anybody else maybe, and it kind of, I don't know, this felt like a hard reset, like where we leave at the end where he goes to visit I forget the character's name, but the guy from shoot, I can't remember his name. It's the show that Simu Liu was in. The grocery store show. I can't remember what it's called. Anyways,
Kim's Convenience.
Yeah, he goes visits the X-wing pilot, right? And it sounds like it's like a hard reset. He's like now he's basically going back to just being a bounty hunter, right? Like he kind of cleared the main story, right?
Yeah.
Now he's just gonna do like the side quest kind of stuff. Like it felt like a hard reset because I think this season felt very MCU-ish, where like we have everything has to connect. We're setting up a lot of stuff for the future. And it didn't feel like that much like the first season, where the first season was just laying the groundwork of like, villain of the week, let's go bounty hunting and all that, right? So it feels like okay, we're done with this. Everything that comes after Ahsoka, Skeleton, everything else can kind of just stand out on its own now because we've already done the heavy lifting. So that stuff can stand on its own. Now the Mandalorian can just go back to being just the Mandalorian, as in like the bounty hunter. So they could do that. They can, because it felt like, he has his happy ending. Now he can just be a bounty hunter and like not worry about some overarching like evil plan. But also they could just transition to Bo-Katan or any other Mandalorian character. So kind of like Vincent was saying, I could see them doing like a time jump and like, because I don't know for sure, but I imagine that Pedro Pascal, like since starting with season 1 and up to now, he's had so many opportunities. He probably wants to kind of branch out and do some other stuff. So he has he can literally do whatever he wants at this point. And so I feel like there's so many ways to pivot from here. So yeah.
All right. Actually, David, before I have you do the same question, I can't believe we actually forgot to talk about another cameo appearance in this season. We forgot to talk about Kelleran Beck.
Oh yeah, and with the X-wing pilots.
Yeah. We get to see how Grogu was saved during Order 66. And lo and behold, the actor who plays Callum Beck, the man who saves Grogu, is actually, I'm just going to say, someone who really deserves this second chance in the Star Wars universe. It's Ahmed Best, who, God love him, poor guy, ended up with the reputation he got thanks to him playing Jar Jar Binks. I don't know if you guys have followed him on Twitter or read any of the stuff about him.
It's awful.
Bess actually talks a lot about how horrible things were because he got blamed completely for everything with Jar Jar Binks.
He was suicidal at one point too, I think he mentions.
Yeah. He was like an inch away from killing himself. He talks about how he fought through it. He's got a son now who means the world to him. How great was it, though, to see him burst in with those 2 lightsabers and be the one who got Grogu to safety? How awesome was it that they gave that role to him?
Yeah. It was really cool.
Yeah. David, I cut you off earlier, so why don't you go ahead and talk about, let's see, what did that mean to you?
I mean, if I hadn't known in advance who it wouldn't have meant a lot to me. But it was a nice gesture. Like, give him something cool to do. You got to be a badass Jedi, save Grogu. Like, it was nice when you know the background story. In the context of just the show itself, it's just like a really nice escape action sequence. And it fills in a bit more of the backstory for how Grogu survived. So yeah, like that was, I liked it. And yeah, it stands on its own even if you don't know the backstory to the actors. So that's kind of what I thought of that. Don't know if we just want to leap into the last few episodes here.
Well, why don't you go ahead then? Like I said, I was about to ask you your thoughts on that final episode. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, from an action standpoint, it was great. I thought that like the fight choreography was pretty fun, and creative use of Grogu, how he kept on helping out during the fight, not necessarily like winning the fight single-handedly, but it was always fun to see like someone reaches to grab the gun on the floor and he just like force pushes it just out of their reach, and then Din goes in and finishes them up. It was fun and it was clever. I can't really complain there. Like the Bo-Katan having to face Moff Gideon again, and after we find out about how he just screwed her over completely, where she bargained with the Darksaber for to spare Mandalore, and then he just completely went back on the deal. And then he tries to make the same deal again, and she's like, no, like yeah, like I'm not that stupid. Like, come on,
fool me once. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I like the little detail of like when he moves around in his suit, you can kind of hear the whirring of machinery. So it's actually obviously power armor, which I think everyone forgot the moment that the Darksaber was crushed. Again, I don't mind the Darksaber getting crushed. I thought like it's just a thing. It's a lightsaber. Like, yes, to Star Wars fans, lightsabers are the most important things in all of the world of fiction, but like they're just tools, guys. Like, like if Han Solo loses his blaster, he's not gonna go like, oh man, that blaster just meant so much to me. It was strapped to my hip when I was on the Death Star, and it just like I got it from Willie Nelson back in the prequel, and it just that's when I learned how to shoot. First, like, no, he just go and get another one.
Yeah,
it's just like, Chewie, grab me another blaster from the blaster bin. Okay, cool, this one will work. Like, like I still, as much as everyone will hate me for this, I laughed so hard in the theater in The Last Jedi when Luke Skywalker threw that lightsaber over his shoulder. I just like, because it was just like 2 years like, oh my God, Luke Skywalker has his father's lightsaber. This is the most important thing ever. Oh, it means so much to him. And he just like chuck it over his shoulder. It's like, it's a lightsaber. Like it's a tool. It's a thing. I mean, like I wouldn't throw one away because like it's a very good tool, but it doesn't mean the same thing to the characters in the universe that it means to the fans, and I'm okay with that. So like that didn't bother me at all. It was nice Din and Grogu having that sort of quiet moment together at the end. Though I thought it was kind of strange because they were really like building up to like, oh, now Din and Grogu are going to get together and they're going to go and travel the galaxy, and Grogu's going to go on his pilgrimage where he learns how to be a Mandalorian. And then no, they just hang out at his cabin on Navarro. I was like, okay, that seemed to not go the direction I thought it was going to go.
They're just going to hang out. He's going to play with frogs.
Yeah, I assume it was just a nice moment, and yeah, they'll get back to that in the next whatever the next thing with Din Djarin is. One thing that did bother me in the earlier season episodes, I should say, was just Bo-Katan's her sort of like defeatism. You know, it's like, oh, they destroyed the entire planet. It's like we're standing on the planet, like all of our cities have been ruined. There's a city right over there, a big one with buildings, like. You know, you can rebuild. There are these people called engineers and builders. Like they can do this stuff. But yeah, like I thought the season felt kind of small to me. Like those 8 episodes went by really quick, and I think they could have probably put a bit more density into the stories. A bit more character work would have been nice. But you know, like for a show about space wizards made for children, I was entertained. Like it was more Star Wars, which is what I ask from my Star Wars. Citizen Kane it is not, but Citizen Kane it should not be.
Well, you talk about density does lead into my next question. This season, while it did get positive reviews and it did get a ton of views and everyone loved it and watched it on Disney Plus, a lot of critics said that it was probably the weaker of the seasons that we've gotten so far. They praised the performances, the musical score, cinematography, and the action scenes, but they said that the writing and the pacing was not as good as what we've gotten before. So, David, going off of what you said, I want to jump over to you, Andrew. What would you have done to make this season a little bit better?
Oh man. I'll put him on the spot here. I guess what I would have so the first episode I didn't think was that great. Second episode, better. Third episode, again, not so great. Fourth episode, better, right? So we have like these like little dips here and there, and then like, you know, kind of up and down. I felt the episodes where it was pertaining to either the culture or the little cult or sect, whatever you want to call them, of Mandalorians, of the Watch, basically. Anything that, like when they're rescuing Vizsla's son from like the giant pterodactyl thing, like that was like a cool episode. Like that.
Suddenly the Mandalorians found themselves in bedrock.
Yeah, they really need to pick their places better where they stay.
Right. Anyways, so when they're focusing on like Mandalorian culture, or they have these stories, or like where they, because that's the same episode where Bo-Katan was like really trying to acclimate to like the Watch's culture, right? Like because you know, she's like, did you go into the water? She's like, yeah. Like, you bathed them? Like, okay, have you taken off your helmet since then? She's like, no. And they're like, okay, then you're like one of us, right? So but like how she kind of learned, like, oh, like because you're the head of like the hunting party, like you get to you have the honor of staying by the fire, and like you don't have to go basically slink off into the dark to eat, right? Mm-hmm. So when we learn more about like the Mandalorians themselves and like how they pertain to Din and stuff like that, like I think those episodes are cool. I would have changed episode 3. The thing is, I don't know where you would put it. Like David mentioned earlier, like we kind of have, I mean, if it has to exist, it has to exist somewhere. Where you would put that, I don't know. But I felt like they really wanted to set up Kane for the long run. Like this season suffers from like I said earlier, the MCU-ification of setting things up for later, right? It's kind of like the Age of Ultron issue where we got to set up all this future stuff, right? So we have to build up Kane. And it's like, where do you have time to do that? Like, unless you're not going to devote a show just to her, right? So I think I probably would have just made that segment shorter. What I think would have worked better is if we had just jumped back and forth, maybe kind of tell like the A story and the B story with like, you know, Mando and Bo-Katan, and you know, pepper in a little bit of this like Dr. Pershing, and I think maybe that would have worked, because episode 3 is just, it starts off with like that dope like TIE fighter sequence, right, on when they destroy her palace or whatever, and then they get away, and then like it's just the meat of the episode is Dr. Pershing and Kane, and then the capstone at the end, the tail end, is just Mando again. So I feel like, you know, mixing that up a little bit, kind of sprinkling it, that would have helped a lot. I liked the Jack Black Lizzo episode, so I would leave that exactly the way it is personally. But first season, I would have just gotten rid of the whole like the quest thing, like, you know, I need this droid or whatever. I thought the pirate stuff was kind of neat because it does kind of connect again to, at the end we have Gideon talk about like how like the pirates were kind of like on their payroll sort of in a way. Like when he's talking to, when he uses the probe droid to communicate with Kane on Coruscant, like you kind of get an idea. He's like, what? Like the Mandalorian, like those two groups hate each other. Like they wouldn't be working together. So it seems like it's all kind of connected. I feel Kane. Yeah, I think episode 3, I would have just mixed up the pacing there. And I think that's the only complaint, because I think most people will agree that episode 3 is the weakest of the season. So I think just changing the pacing, just mixing that around, that would have been better. I hope that made sense.
All right. Vincent, any thoughts? Anything going on?
Yeah. So I think one thing that this show is really missing out on is the ensemble getting their moments in the sun. So because the show is The Mandalorian, they focus on Din and Grogu about 75% of the time. Whereas everybody else, literally everybody else, gets 25% of the screen time. Sorry, I have to plug in my computer as it's going to die on me. So one thing that like Andrew was talking about, trying to get that more sprinkled around, that's something they could have done through the entirety of the show, is sprinkling around the other characters, having more interactions with other characters. Something like a Game of Thrones would do, or The Walking Dead, where it's not always focused on Jon Snow, it's not always focused on Rick Grimes. It's got more episodes that are entirely devoted to other characters, but those other characters are ultimately a part of the bigger picture. And I think that's the thing that this show is missing out on the most, is an ensemble of characters. Yeah, we have Bo-Katan that shows up, and she was a large part of season 3, but she never really had anything just to herself. Anytime she was on screen, she was with Din Djarin. And that's the way it was with most characters. Like, we had a little bit of Captain Teva. Is that his last name? TVA? Yeah, Captain Teva. We had a little bit of him when he meets up with, what's his name? Zeb. And we had a little bit of him when he goes into space and finds Moff Gideon's ship. But that, I mean, it's just straight up like exposition. This is what's happened. This is why it's important. We don't get a whole lot of character to that. So I think that's something that they really need to work on in future seasons, is more of the ensemble getting their character moments.
I like that.
That's a good idea. I like that too.
All right. David, you talked about changing the density of the episodes. Was there anything else you wanted to add on how you think we could have made this last season even better?
Not too much. Again, I went in and I was perfectly happy with what I got for the most part. It's, you know, like it's Star Wars. Like it is more Star Wars, and that's what I ask of Star Wars.
All right.
You know,
well
like,
said. All right. Well, 4th season is in development, of course. Lord knows Disney is not about to shoot one of their few profitable horses and anytime soon.
Excuse me, didn't you hear that this season didn't do as good numbers as previous seasons? So there's mass panic at Disney. Mandalorian's getting canceled. Everything's going away. Bob Iger's cutting and destroying everything. Like, Star Wars is over. It's dead. Disney has killed it with their terrible writing. They didn't write my Star Wars, and everything sucks, and it's horrible. The season should have been like Andor. I wanted 6 episodes of Din Djarin doing his taxes. That's the Star Wars fans want. We don't need this like action and adventure and wonder and kid friendliness. We need like real, serious adult storytelling. That is what Star Wars needs to be to get the real Star Wars fans on side. You know, Disney is spiraling in the drain. It's going out of control. They've killed Star Wars. There's not going to be any more. It's horrible. Sorry, I just thought I would fill in for like the internet.
Yeah, I was gonna say David Wright with his impersonation of Twitter in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. They made Dave Filoni's fan fiction and not my fan fiction, and that's the only Star Wars that matters.
Seriously, though, I've said it before and I'll say it again. At this point, I'm waiting for Disney to just burn down Disneyland for the frickin' insurance money.
Nah, they'll do that to Florida right now. They're not going to do it to Disneyland.
No, they're not going to do it to Florida because they're too busy trying to make sure Ron DeSantis doesn't burn down Disney World.
Yeah, no kidding. He's trying, isn't he?
Yeah. We try to avoid politics on this show, folks, but every now and then we really can't resist. Okay, so yes, fourth season is in production. Well, in development. It's probably not in production yet. They're probably letting Pedro Pascal breathe and decide whether or not he wants to voice Wario in the Super Mario sequel that's coming out. Apparently, Pascal is Jack Black's pick to voice Wario.
Interesting.
I would have gone with Elon Musk, but anyway.
Too evil.
A horrible, horrible man saving the environment.
Saving the environment and watching his rockets done blow up.
Well, this season 4 might take a little while to come out because the writers are about to go on strike in Hollywood.
That is true. Anyone else remember that strike from a few years ago when that happened? I was working, before I got into what I do now, I worked as a graphic designer at our local TV station. It was a CBS affiliate. And I still remember, we had TVs on in our office so we could see what was going on, and they were always on our station. And it was so surreal during that writer strike. All the other shows that aired there, we got to watch an insanely sanitized version of Dexter. And what was Psych. We watched a lot of Psych. Those were the shows that really they used to fill up the space when we couldn't get anything else. But you think, Vincent, you think we're about to see history repeat itself?
Yeah. There's too much corruption and people that are just like, no, we're not going to give you the money because we need it because we're the CEOs and CFOs and all that shit. And they're not taking care of the writers, so the writers are going to strike.
All right, well, let's go ahead and start a betting pool then on which shows we think we're going to see with mass syndication, because again, they're going to need something to fill the airwaves. At this point, I think I could add that to the bingo cards. Until then, of course, we will be back to talk about Ahsoka when that comes out, and we will be going off on the idea of, again, is this actually an Ahsoka series, or is this just Star Wars Rebels Season 5? I fully intend all three of you will be asked that again. So, gentlemen, I'm giving you your homework. You know what to study for. All right. Before we get to plugs, did I miss anything? Any other? Like I said, I can't believe I almost missed talking about Ahmed Best. Are there any other cameo appearances? Any other plot points? Is there anything else I missed?
I mean, there was so much that we just couldn't fit. I mean, the the mythosaur in the water. There's the kaiju on Mandalore that just burst out of the ground for some reason, like in the second to last episode. That I don't know what that was about. That was kind of cool though. The hallway fight that Din had between the laser doors from Phantom Menace, where he just has R5 open them one by one so he can just dispatch them like John Wick style with no weapons, and he's just like taking weapons, upgrading as he goes down the hallway. And like we have like the guards who are just like waiting their turn behind the lane, and like they kind of, you can see that they start to like panic little by little as he gets further down the hallway. There's like so many like a lot of cool stuff that we just don't have the time here. So, but yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that we apologize that we just could not mention here. So,
admittedly, it was cool to actually see the legendary mythosaur. Although I gotta be am I the only one who was expecting that thing to pull like a mosasaur from Jurassic World, jump out and eat Moff Gideon or something?
No, but we did get that. That's how it takes out that pterodactyl in that episode. It falls into the water, and then a bigger like creature comes out and eats it.
Oh yeah.
There's always a bigger
Always
fish.
a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish.
Bigger
that's right.
fish. Thank you, Liam Neeson. You're one of the few actors who managed to get out of Phantom Menace without your career being in shambles.
Hey, Ewan McGregor's doing okay. He did okay.
Very true.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move into the plugs. David, where can we find you next?
I think tomorrow I'm talking Picard season 3 with Mark. I'm just as surprised as everyone else.
Moving from Star Wars to Star Trek. You
Yeah,
traitor.
you can like both. Weird.
You
Who would've
can't
thought?
like both. You should know
Well,
better.
Well, I do, so take that.
Take that.
All right. Mr. Van Spock, where can our listeners, viewers, whoever happened to have stumbled upon us and is wondering what the hell we're talking about, where can they find you?
Vincent Van Spock is my handle on everything. TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of those. So that's where you can find me.
All right. Mr. Orozco, why don't you tell us a little bit about Geek News Now?
Yeah, sure. I'm a staff writer over at Geek News Now. We pretty much talk about everything, including all this Star Wars, video games, Marvel, DC stuff, anything that you would think falls into the umbrella of geekdom, D&D, all that kind of stuff. Even if I don't know much about that stuff, it's there at Geek News Now. I mostly just talk about Star Wars and video games. That's my niche. But yeah, I'm on there. You can find us at geeknewsnow.com. I'm sorry, geeknewsnow.net, I believe. My bad, not .net. And I also have a video game podcast that I co-host with one of my best friends called DuoSense, DuoSense, all together one word. We just talk about weekly. We just talk about what we've been playing and video game news and what's coming out and stuff. So both are very fun endeavors that I would love to have you check out.
All right. As far as my time here with the Radeligion Broadcasting Network, we're going to be doing a discussion later this week on the Disney Plus release of Peter Pan and Wendy, otherwise known as For the Love of God, Disney, You Need to Quit It.
I heard it wasn't that great. Yeah.
Yeah. I had high hopes for Jude Law as Captain Hook. I really did. He's one of my favorite actors. And yeah, I watched it and I'm like, this isn't Neverland. This is New Zealand. We already saw this, okay? Can you try to make Neverland look a little bit more interesting than the roaming shots from the Lord of the Rings movies? Not even the good shots of the Lord of the Rings movies, just the roaming shots.
And then he's also going to be in this year's Star Wars Skeleton Crew also. Jude Law.
Oh, okay. I was just like, wait, what? All right. Well, so yeah, we're going to be talking about that. I will also be returning next week for the Damn You Hollywood to talk Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, aka James Gunn, you are the last. It's like, help us, James Gunn. You are our only hope.
That's this week, right? It comes out this week?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We're going to see if Disney can finally dethrone the Mario Brothers movie. Which they could have if they hadn't caught that movie being uploaded on Twitter like they did.
There was a TV channel, a TV station in Argentina that like played the entirety of the movie. I don't know if you guys read about that. I thought that was kind of funny.
I missed that. We did discuss the Super Mario Brothers movie on an earlier Damn You Hollywood. If you want to go find that, plug with slight spoiler. We gave it a praising review. We absolutely loved it. And as far as the plugs that actually do pay my bills, because Lord knows Mark doesn't, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. We're getting ready to head out to the Indiana Comic-Con in Indianapolis. First year doing that. Really excited. I also just got big news yesterday. It looks like our wares are now going to be available in another shop. We have just inked a deal with Goblin God Games in Omaha, Nebraska.
Ooh.
Really excited. Going to be heading up there not this week, but the next week with a full supply of our YRF dice necklaces, our video game cartridge keychains, and our Scrabble tile pins. And after that, if you're in the Midwest, come check us out at NakaCon in Overland Park, Kansas. That's one of the biggest anime conventions in the Midwest. So excited to be back for that. And as always, you can find our shops on Etsy, Handmade at Amazon, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Under Duress Twitter. That's Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. So for myself, for Mr. Wright, for Mr. Van Spock, for Mr. Orozco, be well, behave, be safe.